Of the Guardian. He's got this very serious intellectual sort of public persona. He's an absolute wind-up in private.
He was actually talking. I missed it about 2 weeks ago at the Guardian here in New York.
Yeah, he was over at CUNY, wasn't he?
Yeah, and I was going to go, and I got slammed with other stuff. You should know, the Guardian's one of our investors in our fund, so we partner quite a bit with them.
Yeah. So just sort of to kick off, what made you want to do what you do? Because you're not a standard VC, are you? There's sort of more to it than that.
Right. I mean, I think that let me give you the sort of not long but not short answer to that. So I've been an entrepreneur. I built companies, sold companies, grown companies up, broken companies, helped make companies. And I thought that the VC, the instrument of VC was a fairly sharp or crude instrument that did one or two things really well, but in the process did a whole bunch of things not so well. And so I think that we can enumerate what those things are.
I was going to say, I'd be curious.
But one of the things which I've learned, and I learned a lot about VC, is when I was running a company called Photolog, which was a very large photo sharing site, early days of Facebook. It was kind of the pre-Flickr, before Flickr. And it grew very large outside the United States. And with that company, I was an angel investor in the company. I then left Time Warner. I then stepped in to run the company. And I got some interest in the company being acquired. And I went to our investors, our VC investors, and said, do you want to sell? And they were like, absolutely not. We're committed to being with this company, absolutely not. And the first offer was for like $20 million. We ended up 2 months later selling it for about $90 million. But the seminal moment was when I got to about an offer for about $75 million. The VCs had said no at like 70, and at 75 they were like, sell right now. And I was like, there's a spreadsheet behind this, isn't there? I was like, this smells like an algorithm. And sure enough, they have a return analysis that they do. And they also, VC money it has a very specific investment life associated with it. And so
about 5 to 8 years?
Yeah, 5 to 8 years typically. And so because of that, it is, it's again that sort of, it's like a scalpel. It's like it really works well for certain things, but you certainly don't want to use it for another purpose that it's not well suited for. And I think that there are many companies who are going to end up being very successful companies, but outside of that time frame. But the VCs within that time frame will say, well, we need to get our money back, so we'll optimize for a suboptimal return, or we'll optimize for an early exit, or earlier exit, because we just see that because our business model requires that. And so I sort of learned a lot about VC. I would say that's sort of one reason why I set up BetaWorks differently. The second thing is that I think that the process of building companies, selling companies, building companies, selling companies is very disruptive to culture and team. And I wanted to set up an environment where I could actually grow culture and team. And I could have a small set of people who worked at BetaWorks, the holding company, BetaWorks itself, that if we sold a Bitly, or if we sold a Giphy, or if we sold something, they wouldn't leave. They would be part of that sort of ongoing culture, so we can continue to be, in the business we were in, because we had a team that were good at doing that on a repeat basis, and all the learnings associated with, building a company, making an investment, doing a partnership deal would actually be grown within the entity instead of having to restart them every time. And then I'm just very sort of counter anything. And so I went out and everybody said, raise a VC fund. And I said, fuck you, I'm not raising a VC fund. You know?
Just contrary.
Yeah. If they had just said, if they had said to me, don't ever raise a VC fund, I would have just raised one.
Would you be on the website?
Yeah, so I think that, you know, I like swimming in a different direction. And so, I mean, I just think that that's part of the equation. So hopefully that wasn't the determinant factor. Just go the other way.
So if you were to try and break out of that 5 to 8 year gridlock, like what's sort of your longest standing involvement with somewhere at the moment?
Well, BetaWorks itself was started up 10 years ago. So, I mean, I'll tell you, I don't. You're not going to make any of this public before the book be published.
No,
okay. You're not going to tweet it.
No.
So
hey, I'm trying to keep the book good.
Yeah. There's an amazing investment that we made at BetaWorks. I want to say 8 or 9 years ago, and we wrote one of the first checks into Everlane, which is an awesome company that is doing has really been a pioneer in transparency around e-commerce. And I mean, on the surface they're a clothing company and they have a good website and they have a couple of stores now.
Yeah.
They're an awesome business that has grown up. They've not raised a lot of money. They have grown up mostly on revenue, being profitable, right?
That's nice.
And, 2 weeks ago I get an email saying that they have raised a round of financing and are sort of early stage investment, 150K is now worth 11 million. And candidly, I had no idea what it was worth. And I'm pegged it to anything.
Yeah.
Because I'm not looking every 6 months or every quarter to peg something and see if I can move it along or see if I could sell it. So there's an example where, I'm not sure if I want the numbers to be public, but there's an example where, just being a long-term holder has been incredibly valuable, and I think that it's counter to what a VC would have done.
Yeah, I think what's interesting there is you sort of talk about a company growing on revenue, sort of still sort of on one level modest in scale, but clearly growing. One of the big criticisms I hear, and to me it seems valid, is the sort of VC philosophy is tied to exponential growth. And that seems to tie a lot of places into build, scale, then revenue. And that usually then means tacking the ad model onto it.
Yep.
And if we agree that everything having to be exponential has become a problem, and the ad model, or programmatic ads, etc., have become problems, do we think there's a bigger kind of bad interaction between VC and sort of the stability and the quality of the internet?
I mean, I think that, again, going back to that finely edged scalpel, that finely pointed scalpel, is that it does certain things incredibly well. And one of the things you can do with VC financing is that if you're on the right side of a growth momentum curve, is you can raise extraordinary amounts of money. And I've seen companies in our portfolio and outside of BetaWorks that have raised too much money, and the amount of money has either resulted in the company you're specifically pointing towards programmatic or attention-based monetization as being the fastest solution to a scale of how am I going to monetize now. I've raised couple $100 million and I've made a dime yet.
It seems to be the default thing when someone's suddenly told, hey, no, you need to do revenue as well as scale.
I think you're right. I'm not sure if, I think the VC is definitely part of that sort of toxic, or that potentially toxic mix. I do think that there are a lot of other pieces. So one thing which I always think is that I think we made